Hi friends, welcome to another mental health video. I'm Mark, a mental health therapist, and today we are going to learn how to talk about trauma. Before we get to talking about our trauma, we should get a definition of what trauma is. So basically, trauma occurs when we get a severely long-lasting emotional impact from any event, circumstance, or experience that we have. So for example, maybe we get into a car accident, and for many, many years, we get really scared every time we get into a car. Maybe we can't even drive a car ever again because of how scared we get. Or maybe where we come from has war, and we're stuck there for a long time. We might react for many years. We might react by jumping every time there's a loud noise, or getting startled whenever somebody appears suddenly in our eyesight. There are many symptoms related to trauma, and if you've had a traumatic experience, you may not experience all of these symptoms all the time. There are physical symptoms, for example, aches and pains without a medical reason for them, or perhaps you frequently sweat or your heart starts racing for no reason. There are also symptoms affecting our thoughts and emotions. Maybe we used to believe that the world was a good place to live in and safe, but now we think it's completely unsafe. Or maybe we feel the same way about people. We might also have mood changes. We might get angry much quicker or sad suddenly, whereas before maybe we were more calm and balanced in our emotional states. Finally, there are behavioral symptoms of trauma as well, such as sleeping or eating much more or much less, getting startled or jumping by sudden noises or sudden movements, avoiding anything that reminds you of your trauma, such as the news or specific places, and also avoiding talking about it. In the next section, we're going to actually talk about how avoidance is ultimately harmful in the long term and makes trauma worse. Now, in order to talk about avoidance and why that's harmful, we have to talk a little bit about anxiety, which is also a symptom of trauma. Anxiety is a feeling of fear or panic or threat at a situation that is not particularly threatening, such as going outside or walking past a stranger. So I'm going to throw up this graphic called the anxiety cycle. So if you remember from the last video, there's this part of our brain called the amygdala that detects threats. Now, when you have suffered trauma, your amygdala gets hypersensitive to anything that is related to that trauma and may react even when something is not actually a threat for real. So, using the anxiety cycle, we're going to walk through this using an example. Let's say, as a traumatic experience, you were in a car crash, all right? Maybe you got really badly hurt or somebody else in that vehicle got really badly hurt. Either way, it caused trauma to you. So the next time you want to go somewhere, maybe your friend says, hey, I'm going to come pick you up in my car. Your brain is going to react thinking this is a threat. All right, so then you may try to avoid the threat, which is the next stage of the anxiety cycle. So instead of agreeing to your friend to pick you up, you decide you would rather walk to where you're going to meet. Okay? So then you avoid the threat. Then you feel some temporary relief. You didn't have to get into a car, right? You didn't have to drive or anything related to a vehicle. But then this, in the fourth stage of the cycle, just reinforces the idea that it was dangerous to get in that car, right? Even if your friend is a perfectly reasonable driver, and you know this in your head, that your friend is a safe and conscientious driver, it doesn't matter because your trauma is going to tell you it's still a threat. And then as we go through this cycle over and over, the feeling like that is a threat will keep increasing and increasing and increasing. So this is why avoidance is ultimately harmful. Choosing not to talk about your trauma because it brings up memories of your trauma is also a form of avoidance. And the last bit of this video is going to be focused on how we learn to talk about our trauma. Telling the story of your trauma is about teaching your brain to relearn how to feel safe, teaching your brain that avoidance is not the answer, and getting you back to some form of what you may have been like before the trauma occurred. Now, to start with speaking about your trauma, telling your trauma story, you should seek out a mental health professional. The reason you should tell your trauma story to a mental health professional, like a therapist, is because they can help you learn skills and techniques to manage the emotions and thoughts that you'll have while you talk about your trauma. They'll also help you identify the triggers in your life and environment that result in you remembering or reliving your traumatic experience. They will also be able to help you identify friends or family members or other loved ones who would be safe and non-judgmental people that you could tell your story to afterwards. Finally, when you get to the point where you're working on finding out who in your life would be that kind of person to talk to, there are some important things to consider. First, this person should be a person who won't interrupt you when you're telling your story. They should also be a person who won't judge you or criticize you for what happened. They should be a person who isn't going to try to make things better or give you advice or tell you to just cheer up and get over it. They should also be somebody you're absolutely certain won't tell anyone else in your life or community. And finally, you should choose somebody who does not have a similar trauma to yours, or if they do, has healed already from that trauma. Thank you everybody for watching another one of my videos. I hope that you've learned something valuable and that it will help you heal in whatever way you need to heal. I will see you again. Take care.